Most of us grow up with a very specific idea of how the world works. We watch elections, listen to speeches, and assume the elected officials passing resolutions at international podiums are the ones driving history. For centuries, political authority was backed by one obvious metric: physical borders and heavy military hardware. But today, holding political office and maintaining a standing army cannot guarantee a nation's influence. A modern state can neutralize a rival economy, freeze their assets, and force compliance without ever deploying a single troop or firing a physical bullet. To make sense of global events today, you have to look past the traditional map of competing countries. Beneath the surface lies a complex, interconnected system. Understanding how it operates explains why some nations rise while others struggle to adapt. The first layer of the system operates through global finance. This network of central banks and investment flows exerts a persistent pressure on the policy decisions of every national government. Institutions like the United States Federal Reserve make routine adjustments to interest rates. Those small policy tweaks ripple outward immediately, dictating borrowing costs, inflation, and housing markets across the entire global economy. When trade routes are targeted by sanctions, the result is a modern blockade, starving a country of capital. Because major powers control reserve currencies and payment networks, they freeze foreign assets with a keystroke, locking rivals out of the global market. For decades after World War II, this financial architecture was highly unified, managed by Western-led institutions like the IMF and the World Bank to promote reconstruction and stability. But rapid economic expansion across Asia, heavily driven by large-scale infrastructure investments from China, has fractured that old consensus. The global economy is splitting into competing strategic blocks. Financial infrastructure is now an instrument of statecraft, used to incentivize cooperation or punish dissent across the landscape of international trade. Operating on top of that financial layer is a second force: multinational corporations. Many of these companies generate annual revenues that dwarf the GDPs of the nations they operate within. Governments rely heavily on these massive corporate supply chains for jobs and technological innovation. In return, the corporations need the legal security and market access that only governments can enforce. That codependence becomes highly volatile when we look at the physical materials driving modern technology. Elements like neodymium and dysprosium are required to build smartphones, to electric vehicles, to advanced military radar. In the 20th century, global alliances were forged and wars were actively fought over access to crude oil. Today, the ability to extract and process these critical rare earth minerals dictates industrial dominance. When one nation dominates the global processing capacity, it forces competing governments to invest billions of dollars just to break their reliance on a single supplier. This concentration of control means a shipment delay of microchips or raw minerals creates an immediate national security vulnerability, turning industrial logistics into frontline defense. Physical resources and financial capital require public support to mobilize. That brings us to the final layer of global power: the information ecosystem. Media organizations frame global events through specific narratives, determining how a society will interpret events and justify political responses. Information shapes public opinion, which then translates into votes and the eventual formation of national policy. With the instant distribution of the modern internet, a highly targeted, heavily promoted story can trigger protests or destabilize foreign markets within hours. Countries are now pouring vast resources into digital influence campaigns. Winning the digital narrative has become a prerequisite for deploying economic pressure or physical force. When you combine these forces, capital, vast corporate infrastructure, and digital narratives, you enter the realm of geoeconomics. Instead of sending battalions to capture a capital city, a modern superpower restricts technology exports. They impose targeted tariffs and rewrite trade agreements to slow a competitor's industrial growth. This network visualization maps the reality. There is no secret organization pulling strings. It is a massive, decentralized web of influence. Distinct centers of power, banks, corporations, and states, are constantly negotiating. They cooperate when interests align, compete for resources, and suddenly collide when red lines are crossed. The next time a major crisis dominates the news cycle, look past the politicians standing at the podiums. They are reacting to the system, not always controlling it. To navigate the modern world, you have to read the underlying architecture. Behind every market shock and every broken alliance, you simply have to ask, who truly holds power, and exactly how are they weaponizing it?